Huh? Isaac, Tiff, Yaakov, Lini, Justin, Michal. Okay.
You're alive.
L'chaim.
Okay, go for it.
I just want to say a very big thank you to all of you for coming along for Shiur number 2 of our relationship series. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I wanted to thank publicly JC and Bryna Aptan for sponsoring tonight's event here at the shul. Chazak Baruch to them. Thank you very, very much. The first class was awesome. We have a nice bigger crowd for class number 2. We're looking forward to continuation. Rabbi, thank you very, very much for leading the charge with this and inspiring us and giving us another class. And we look forward to having a good night together and going from there. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Enjoy.
Thank you, everyone. Bruchim habayim to everyone who came out again tonight in a different setting, more formal, I guess, that we're in the Bet Knesset. I want to apologize in advance that I'm still suffering from throat problems and voice problems, so I will do my best to deliver the shiur. It might not be with as much energy because I'm, trying to recuperate the voice, but hope you can forgive me for that. Again, if you want to just grab food as I go along, I take no offense. Just go refill as you need. To anyone that is watching this shiur online or listening on the podcast or on YouTube, this is not a shiur for anyone that is not married or not looking to get married. Which means, if you are listening with little children, stop or put on headphones. Again, this is a shiur for mature audiences, as the Havdil, they say in the movies, mature audiences only, because we are going to discuss. We are actually going. If you thought the part 1 was for mature audiences, part 2 is going to be even more. We started last week with intimacy. We're going to continue with that, but focus more on the laws of ona, the laws of sexual relations. Yes, there are laws. There are laws, everything. Judaism, you cannot do anything in life where there is not a halacha connected to it. And even when it comes to intimacy, we have halachot, we have ma'amarei chazal, we have Satan Shomer Chachamim. Let's just recap a little bit with what we spoke about last time on how it's going to be connected to what we're going to talk about today. The parameters of the mitzvah. All this again is from the Sefer Pninei Halacha from Rabbi Eliezer Melamed. There's a whole book on this. And all the information is from him, and I'm just really giving it over. The mitzvah of ona, the mitzvah of sexual relations, whenever I say ona, that's what I'm referring to, is for a man to bring pleasure, to bring joy to his wife as best as he can, to achieve sexual union with his wife. It has to be done with joy. It has to be with simcha. And every man, as we're going to see later on, fulfills this as frequently as his physical stamina allows him to do so. And also his professional demands allow him to do so. A woman also has a mitzvah to couple with her husband and to enjoy his presence. And the more that she enjoys that coupling, the greater the mitzvah. And it has to be joyful. It has to be pleasurable. That's why the mitzvah we spoke about last time is called Simchat Ona. Simchat Lashon, happiness. So joy. Abstaining from sexual relations, from intimacy, is deemed a type of tormenting, as the Gemara tells us. We also spoke about in class 1 that the mitzvah of Ona is independent of the mitzvah of procreation, of having children. So one fulfills the mitzvah of Ona even when they cannot lead to pregnancy, such as when the wife is already pregnant, or nursing, or even after menopause. There is the mitzvah of Ona. The central element to the mitzvah of Ona is for the husband to bring complete joy to his wife, to the point where his wife climaxes in orgasm. That is the essence. And short of this can result in frustration. Frustration because the lead up to such feelings it builds up physical, it builds up psychological, bliss. And if you don't reach that climax, if she does not experience that climax and that orgasm, then the tensions, the frustrations could come up, or sometimes even could remain if she had those tensions and frustrations from before that. The wife has a mitzvah to be responsive to her husband, to participate actively in the mitzvah the best as she can, because without her desire and without her efforts for that mutual pleasure, then it's impossible for her to fulfill the mitzvah. But if she is too exhausted or she is too tense and it's going to be difficult for her to achieve the climax and the orgasm, then she could choose to forego it, and then whatever the other pleasures come throughout the union, throughout the bonding, that also is still a mitzvah. But nevertheless, we'll talk about it. They both have to try to make sure that doesn't happen too frequently. The more that a husband gives his wife, the more that there's pleasure in the ona, in the relations, then the better. In fact, again, we spoke about in class number 1, this is the ultimate fulfillment of the mitzvah ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, which is love your fellow as yourself, which is in Parashat Kedoshim, which entails a spouse looking out for the good of the other, for the best of their ability. It's not just my friend. We always try to do what I want to do for my friend. Your best friend is your spouse. So I want to look out for their best well-being and vice versa. And the greatest physical and emotional pleasure that a person can experience in this world is shared by a husband and wife. And therefore, if a man deprives his wife of that pleasure, he's being oppressive. Because there's no other man in the world that can provide her that joy, that can provide her that pleasure. Same the other way around. If a woman deprives her husband of that pleasure, then that's being oppressive, because there's no one else in the world that can do that for the man. The mitzvah is also called derech eretz. We're going to expand on this later on today, which means the way of the world. Derech eretz. That literally means the way. We're not talking about derech eretz like kindness and have good midot and manners. That's the different type of derech eretz. But derech eretz, the way of the world, because every person on earth yearns for a pleasurable sexual union. And it is really the greatest pleasure that you could experience in this world. So when the Torah gives us a mitzvah of onah, okay, that it means that reaching that climax, that peak pleasure that people yearn for. And if a husband or wife does not feel that yearning, then they have to try to heal themselves so that it's joyful for both of them. In fact, the Mekubalim tell us that a person who doesn't experience sexual longing is worse than a donkey, because he will never come to love God. What does God have anything to do with this? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu created human beings biologically to have this nature, this healthy nature that want to progress in their love for something. So if I don't find love for another person, then how can I find love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Anyone who is detached from the life-giving impulse of onah, of sexual intercourse, is far from faith. He's far from holiness, and he fails to repair the world, because there's no procreation for sure, and therefore that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to see. The obligation of onah is incumbent upon the man, incumbent upon ish. The Torah tells us she'era onata she'ara kesuta lo igra, that a man cannot withhold the clothing and the ona, which is the flesh. She'era is the flesh-to-flesh contact that he has to have during intimacy. It's always a question that is always asked: can a person have intimacy while they are clothed? I think we answered this last week. The answer is no. You have to be naked. There needs to be a flesh-to-flesh contact. That fulfills the mitzvah of she'era. Kesuta is the bed, or the bedding, and some say it's the clothing that is used during intimacy. And then there's onata. Onata is the actual conjugal act itself. If a husband does not fulfill this mitzvah properly, he causes his wife pain. There is. We actually spoke about ona being the lashon of ainui, of pain. This was in class number 1. And at the same time, if she doesn't respond joyfully and willfully, then the mitzvah is worthless. So therefore, the fulfillment of the mitzvah depends on both of them, but the primary duty, the obligation of fulfilling the mitzvah is on the man. Just like the mitzvah is on the man to marry his wife, because he is responsible to court his wife, to find his wife, to gain consent from her, and then marry her. Rav Melamed actually has he talks about beautifully the difference between men and women. There's a lot of differences between men and women, but in this aspect, that if a man doesn't verbally articulate his love that he has for his wife, and does not increase the pleasure by embracing her and kissing her and caressing her and doing everything that he needs to do, then most probably she's not going to climax. She's not going to reach orgasm. And one of the most amazing things how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created women is that their spirit, their mind, and their body are more integrated in them than they are with men. So under normal circumstances, it's only when all of these elements are brought together with love and pleasure that a woman can reach orgasm, and it's required, and man needs to do that. But the nature of man is different. The nature of man divides realms. A man can satisfy his physical lust without any emotional connection, without any spiritual connection. A man can ignore everything that's all around him and focus on one thing, and then totally forget where they are. That's just who we are as males. But it's also what allows the male to court his wife, his future wife, to overcome obstacles and persist until she agrees. That's what men do. Man, if that's who I want to marry, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure to see if she would become my wife. And that's why it's the man who performs the act of kiddushin, and not the woman who performs the act of kiddushin under the chuppah. On the other hand, once the goal of getting married is achieved, then men can sometimes lose that emotional connection or interest in having a very wholesome relationship with his wife. They were so focused on courting his spouse, he was so focused in getting married, that now that he's married, he doesn't realize all the challenges that were sitting around him all the time. A woman can put it all together. A woman can multitask. Man is only focused on the narrow-minded. Now I got married, now what? She realizes he's got all these things in his life that he's got to deal with. That is why the Torah tells us in Parashat Ki Tetzeh that a new husband is not allowed to serve in the army. He can't. A new husband is not allowed to take business trips during the first year of their marriage. A new husband is not allowed to start this new venture. He's got to spend time with his wife. Shana achat yeh bebeto shana achat. He's got to be with his wife for 1 year. Because that allows newlyweds to build that foundation. Something similar can happen during sexual relations. A man might be very passionate beforehand. But as soon as he finishes, as soon as he ejaculates, then he loses interest in his wife. It's like, okay, I'm done. Like that's it. And since men were created that they could reach climax in very short time, much shorter than their wives, if without providing any joy to the wife during the intercourse, during the ona, then it's a fail. It's a fail. It doesn't mean that if the man ejaculates before the wife, then it's a fail. But if it's solely for the purpose of fulfilling his pleasure, like we're going to see, then there's no mitzvah at all. So when the Chachamim say that the mitzvah is incumbent upon the man, it's meaning his job is to bring as much joy and pleasure to her, not to himself, to her. And that's why the Chachamim tell us that a husband is not allowed to compel his wife to fulfill the mitzvah. And anyone who does compel his wife to perform the mitzvah will have indecent children, says the Gemara in Masechet Eruvin. So that's why if the man's to fulfill the mitzvah needs to be done through both parties. If the purpose is only to satisfy a man's urge, without him trying to bring pleasure to his wife, there is no mitzvah. Because of the woman's nature, man has to express love for his wife, and that gives a lot more depth and wholesomeness to the act. Sure.
Are there any restrictions around how the man...
No, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. Good question, and we're going to see that soon. At the same time, if the woman does not desire to be intimate with her husband, if the woman is not responsive to his advances and does not experience joy with him, then she actively goes against the mitzvah. She is countermanding the mitzvah, which is a problem. And if that situation persists, that destroys the home. That marriage won't last. The Gemara Masechet Ketubot says, if a woman claims that she finds her husband repulsive, he must divorce her, and she forfeits her ketubah. Because no point. She has to divorce her because it's impossible to maintain a marriage without the joy of sexual relations. But she forfeits her ketubah because she breached the most basic essence of marriage. So now, remember we said this class is the laws of Ona. We're going to get to the question that was asked. So, often, I'm not saying all the time, but often it is known that when a husband and wife are going to perform the mitzvah of sexual relations. The most obvious scenario would be the night of the mikveh, which we're not going to talk about this time. Maybe we're going to talk about it in part 3, if I'm invited back. Or not blocked by YouTube in some capacity. So, most of the time, kind of have the feeling, or you know what's going to happen. And therefore, a few hours before, or a few minutes before, to each their own, a husband should begin to express the love for his wife. That's eager anticipation of what's going to be. That arouses the wife. It makes her filled with love. It makes her filled with desire. And that's why, during those moments, especially on the night of a mikveh, that they should not engage in controversial discussion. They should not engage in subjects that are going to lead to an argument, or a subject that's going to lead to some sort of stress in between them, because you don't want to deter and pull back from the joy of the mitzvah. In fact, Chachamim also tell us that whoever raises a subject that could ruin that joy of the mitzvah will have to answer to it in the future. What does that mean? Have to answer to it in the future. So the Gemara quotes a pasuk in Sefer Amos. Amos was one of the Trei Asar. The pasuk says, "Ki hine yotzer harim ubore ruach," that Hashem forms mountains and creates wind. Umagid la'adam masicho, and reveals his words to a person. Reveals his words. The Gemara says, what does it mean masicho? So siyach also means conversation. The Gemara expounds here that God will hold us responsible for the excess words, the sihah that a husband has with his wife. And if the conversation that you're having with your wife prior to intercourse is not going to make intercourse better but going to make it worse, God says, I'm going to hold you accountable for that. Because your conversation, you decide to bring up this subject that caused a whole balagan and a whole argument, a whole fight, and it didn't make the act of onah as pleasurable, desirable, or worse, you lost it altogether. Even when they're intimate, when a husband and wife are intimate, it's a mitzvah for the husband to tell his wife how much he loves her. And he should not hold back from any compliment. Talk about her beauty, talk about her character, whatever is going to bring her joy. That doesn't mean he has to make things up. Someone talking about make things up just like, but just be honest. Think how deeply you love your wife and give true compliments to your wife. You could stretch the tooth a little bit, all right? Whatever is going to bring the mitzvah to its fullest pleasure. So now what's included in this mitzvah? How does this work? To answer Ben's question. So there's embracing, there's kissing, there's caressing any part of the body that is going to be pleasurable and enjoyable for the wife. And the idea is to proceed all the way to the parts of the body where the woman receives the most pleasure, which is usually the clitoris, all right, by the vagina, and that is the area where the woman really, really feels ultimate pleasure. And like we said at the beginning of this class, that is the goal. That's the goal. So if you can bring her to that climax, then you know. Now every woman knows her body the best, and therefore a wife should not be hesitant in, telling the husband what to do, showing the husband where it is. Some men don't know. Okay, I would argue to say many men don't know, but that's nothing wrong with that. So everybody wants to feel the utmost pleasure. So therefore, she can teach her husband how to bring the pleasure. And since every person is different, it is important to have open conversations, either during or before or whatever it is, so that he knows how to increase her joy and she will respond and open up for him. For most couples, it's best for the husband to try to enable his wife to reach orgasm before him, because otherwise, like we said, he might, if he finishes first, he's going to be drained of desire, and then he won't be able to go on. It seems to be, he brings down that in the olden days, women were able to achieve climax and orgasm even without penetration, even without even manual stimulation of the clitoris. Nowadays, it seems that that's very difficult to do, and women kind of need that manual stimulation. It's always been the way of the virtue of the Chachamim. And remember, you have to remember this. The Chachamim are willing to speak about this in the Talmud, the holiest book that we have. It only goes to show you how holy this mitzvah is. Don't think, God forbid, that everything that we're talking about here is just because we're discussing and using expressions that are for mature audiences. That is not holy work. The Gemara spends pages and pages. The rabbis are talking about this because they understand what it is. For that reason, the Chachamim talk about or admonish fathers who marry off their daughters to Ameh Haaretz. Ameh Haaretz literally means coarse ignoramuses, people that are not Talmidei Chachamim. What does that mean? The Gemara compares it. If someone marries off his daughter to an Ameh Haaretz, it's as if he tied her up in front of a lion. What does that mean? That just like the lion attacks and devours the prey without any shame, so too, Ameh Haaretz, all he cares about is just fulfilling his own desire. And he penetrates his wife, and he gets it done with, finished, and that's what it is. That's what happens. But if you marry off your daughter to either a Talmid Chacham or to a scholar, someone who understands the kedusha of this, and you know what the act of onah is all about, then it's not just about satisfying my own urges. It's not about bringing my wife pleasure. It's the opposite. It's all for her. And that's why, having that in mind, when the Chachamim say a Talmid Chacham, it's not just a Talmid Chacham. The guy sits and studies Gemara all day, and the guy does Chumash and Rashi every week. That's also good, for sure. But it's talking about knowing the kedusha of what's involved, the holiness of what's involved with this act. We spoke about Derech Eretz. Refill. God created man and woman to yearn for each other naturally. And that attraction is a good thing. That sexual attraction is a good thing. Derech Eretz kadma la Torah. Right? The Derech Eretz preceded the Torah. Meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu already commanded human beings to fulfill their natural desires within the sacred framework of marriage, of matrimony. And if people stifled their natural desires, they wouldn't be able to fulfill this mitzvah properly, nor would they be able to fulfill any mitzvah properly. That's what we're saying here. Derech Eretz kadma la Torah. The mitzvah of a husband and wife coming together, meaning you wouldn't be able to fulfill any other Torah. And that's why the Gemara also tells us that Rabbi Yochanan says, had the Torah not been given, then we would have learned modesty from the cat. Because the cat excretes and defecates in private and covers up the excretion. We will learn honesty from the ant. Because the ant doesn't steal from another ant. We will learn fidelity from the dove, which only has one partner. And we will learn derech eretz from the rooster. The derech eretz, again, is not midot, being a nice guy. All right, we don't know. I have no clue whether or not a rooster is a good mammal or bird, or I have no idea. Okay? Derech eretz means the act of sexual union. Of ona, we would learn from the rooster. Why? Because just like the rooster courts and seduces the hen before mating with her, so too, that's what men have to do. Meaning there are moral principles that we have to grasp through heart, conscious, and if you don't grasp these principles, then you're lacking something basic. The rooster, the Gemara expands on this. And the Gemara says that the rooster is an animal that is known for its enormous mating habits and for expertise in courtship and seduction. No coincidence, says Rav Melamed, that the Hebrew word for rooster is gever, which also means a man. Okay, so the name for rooster, some call it tarnegol, but no, it's a gever, and it also means a man. And the Chachamim go on to interpret what the rooster does. When he flaps the wings up and down to court the female, he's basically promising the female that he's gonna buy her this beautiful coat that reaches the ground. But after he finishes mating, he bows down or lowers its head, lowers its crest into a humble pose, apologizing that he doesn't have enough money to buy her the coat that he promised. So he is swearing on the life of that crest that it should be cut off because he doesn't have the money to buy her a coat. So what does that mean? It means here that the husband, that's the mashal. Well, it's not mashal, it actually takes place. So now, if the man is compared to the rooster, what does that mean for the man? That the husband should not hold back to praising and complimenting his wife for her beauty and her character and her midot and everything she says and everything she does. And stretch the truth out a bit, even if it's okay. Because the rooster also makes a promise that it knows it can't keep. But he acknowledges the love and the esteem, saying that that's what she truly deserves. And therefore, even after sexual relations, when the act is done, a man should not be like the husband that loses interest in his wife, turn their backs, fall asleep, which is very easy to do, but rather, like the rooster, apologize for I'm limited. Man is limited. He has limitations. It doesn't allow me. I don't have the stamina to really show and express the love and affection that you really deserve. Another aspect of derech eretz that we can learn from the natural world is that it's the man who must initiate the intimacy, because his desire is more external, it's more obvious, and becomes apparent faster. And through that arousal, the wife must reciprocate and respond in kind. The Gemara Masechet Nedarim talks about how, in the context of derech eretz, that sexual relations are compared to a banquet, like a beautiful dinner that you're making, not just sushi, like a really, really nice, wedding or dinner where you have a nice tablecloth, silverware, dishes, cups, liquor, wine, everything you plan, beverages, you have a beautiful dessert, delicious dessert, appetizers. And so too, just like you would invest in the time in preparing for that banquet, so too you have to invest in preparing for marital relations, which is the mitzvah min Torah. And sometimes banquets differ from one time to the next. You don't have the same menu. If you're going to the same restaurant and you get the same menu all the time, you're going to say, I'm tired, I don't want to go here anymore. Give me something new. Chef, give me something new. I want to try something new. So too, the compliments that a husband pays his wife should be something different. All the time. That's what's going to bring her joy and pleasure. Some people are more adventurous when they want to try things on the menu. And others prefer similar. Same thing when it comes to the actual act of sexual relations. Don't be afraid to try different things. What's going to bring my wife and the wife should think what's going to bring my husband to enjoy this act more. Now, it goes without saying, this is something very important. Remember, these are laws of Onah. We're talking about halachot here. All this is halachot. You got to remember this. It goes without saying that derech eretz also includes personal hygiene. Got a few laughs over there? No. Personal hygiene. Removing anything that is unsightly. Removing anything that is going to be off-putting. Getting rid of things that are off-putting is an obligation to do before marital intercourse. And going above and beyond is admirable. That applies both to men and women. And in fact, Rav Chisda, again in the Gemara, Masechet Shabbat, tells us that you should tell his daughters, before they got married, to avoid foods that would give them bad breath or upset stomach. Right? Whatever it is. And he would say, proper hygiene or lack thereof is grounds for divorce. It's grounds for divorce because how are you not enjoying? Let's use the bad breath, for example. Bad breath. You come, you want to caress your wife, you want to kiss your wife, and she has bad breath, or he has bad breath. It's a total turn-off. Total turn-off. I don't want to be next to you, you stink. Alright? Or the man just worked a long day, he smells. He didn't take a shower. He didn't put on deodorant. I don't want to be next to you. This is annoying. Right? It happens. It all happens. So there's nothing wrong with the wife telling the husband, or vice versa, you know what? Go brush your teeth, come back to bed. Right? Because you want it to be pleasurable. And if not, if a person, is kept unkempt and looks or feels or smells in a way that this is not going to be a pleasurable experience, then that defeats the purpose. So the husband and the wife have to be attentive and sensitive to what might bother the other person. And certainly when it comes to things that are generally viewed as disgusting. We said before that even though the mitzvah is incumbent upon the man, women are equal partners in the mitzvah. Because again, without her responsiveness, then the mitzvah is empty. It's a woman has that same obligation to express her feelings to her husband. The mitzvah, ve'afta l'reacha kamocha, it works both ways. It's klal gadol b'Torah. So a woman too has to bring her husband joy through whatever she knows will give him pleasure, and the more she does, the bigger mitzvah. The stronger the couple's love and desire that they have for each other, the more complete the union is going to be. And the more wonderful the children will be. The rabbis tell us that when a woman feels intense desire to be with her husband, she's connecting mamash to the root of hayut, to the root of life and unity. And therefore, as a reward, she's going to have children who are going to have the utmost refinement and who are deserving of redemption, who are deserving of freedom, deserving of liberty. And when we quoted last class that this is what the Chachamim meant, that in the zechut of the Nashim Tzadkaniot, of the righteous women of the generation, the Jewish people were redeemed from Mitzrayim. Because of the virtue of wanting to be with their husbands and their expression of desire, even though they were working as slaves all day and they probably barely even saw their wives, they gave birth to the generation of redemption. Those were the children that saw the splitting of the sea. Those were the children that in some of them may probably even entered Eretz Yisrael. So how does that happen? How does a woman increase love? One way to do it is to adorn yourself with jewelry for your husbands. You would think this is something that is anti-Torah, right? Or perfume. It's a physical thing, right? You always hear, stay away from the physical, right? It's physical. Why should I? My husband should love me the way I am, even without jewelry, even without smelling nice. No, that's not the way it is. Ezra Sofer allowed peddlers to sell perfumes and jewelry. And the townspeople were objecting, and they said, how can you allow this? We spoke about the mirrors in the first class. Right? And Moshe didn't want to have a mirror, and Hashem says, what are you talking about? It's because of these mirrors that they were able to have children. Ezra knew this. And everyone said, you're going to sell perfumes? You're going to open up Hudson's Bay, the Bay to sell a perfume and makeup line here, Sephora? What is this? We don't care about looks. We don't care about physicality. There's truth to that statement. Azaz says, yeah, but not when it comes to contributing to a husband and wife's relationship. Because we don't want women to be undesirable to their husbands. According to the Midrash, HaKadosh Baruch Hu beautified Chava, braided her hair, so Adam would love her more. And the main purpose for a woman to wear accessories and jewelry and perfume and makeup is for her husband to desire her more. In fact, Rabbi Chai Gaon writes, very strong statement, may a curse fall upon the woman who is married but does not adorn herself for her husband. And a curse befall a woman who is not married yet adorns herself. Because then she's just looking for trouble, right? We're not talking about women that are looking to get married. That's a different thing. Don't go on a date looking like a pasta, right? That's fine. That's not fine. You have to adorn yourself. But he's referring to women who are just looking to have a good time and probably commit averot. But certainly, this is a big problem nowadays. I'll go on a little bit of a rant. But women feel, I had a long day. Off comes the clothes. I'm going to put on a pajama. I'm going to put on a t-shirt that doesn't fit me. It's ripped. It's whatever it is. And you know what? Here I am. And your husband comes home. He's exhausted, and that's what he sees. That's what he sees. How do you expect the husband to show love, to show affection? And then you're going to complain, my husband doesn't love me. My husband doesn't show. My husband doesn't kiss me. He doesn't caress me. You look yourself in the mirror. Why is it that your hair is disheveled? Why is it that you have no makeup on? Not as I'm saying over there. It's not you're going to a wedding and you got to really sit there for 30 minutes. It's not what I'm referring to here. But a basic makeup, a basic hairdo, put on a nice dress for your husband when he comes home. That's something that is very important. And I think is lacking a lot in today's society. And I get it, people are tired and they just want to get out of their work clothes. I'm still in my work clothes. It's almost like I go to sleep with this, right? It's like almost 9 p.m. But okay, I get it. Everyone wants to just take this off. But if you haven't seen your husband for the day, and sometimes more than a day, and you want your husband to feel attracted to you and be attracted to you and love you and caress you and be intimate at night, then look the part. Look the part. Girls don't care about the other way. It doesn't work so much the other way. A husband can walk around in a t-shirt and shorts, and the woman will be fine. Okay, it's just as long as they don't smell, like I said, then it's all right. But men really do care about this, and I think it's not spoken about enough. Because when a woman does not show love for her husband, does not long to be with him, she drains the joy from his life as well. The Midrash says there is no end to the goodness of a good wife, but there's also no end to the badness of a bad wife. And also, the Chachamim would tell one another that I would rather die than be with my current wife, because it was so bad, because she was holding back everything for them. It wasn't giving the man any joy, any pleasure. And that's really how far it can go. So that's really a message for the women listening and the women in the audience. A woman who seduces her husband to fulfill the mitzvah of onah, the rabbis tell us, will have children who didn't even exist like the generation of Moshe. Big bracha. Meaning if you perform acts, propositions to your husband, dress nicely, cuddle with him, kiss him on the neck, whatever it is, and then you have children from that union, children like the generation of Moshe, even better. That's what the Gemara tells us. Who did something like this similarly? 2 weeks ago, Leah Imenu. Yaakov comes home from the field in the evening. Story with the flowers, right? Reuven, this, Daim. And Leah says, I'll trade you. I'll sell to you, just so that I can be with Yaakov tonight. And of course, we know the history of Leah is for a different shiur of like what she was feeling as the second wife, the least important, or not the least, but definitely not Rachel. And it's a whole class to discuss her emotions and what she was probably thinking, watching her husband love someone else more. But for whatever reason, she wanted Yaakov that night. And she sold these dudaim to have him. And the Torah tells us that night she conceived. And who was conceived that night? Issachar. Issachar is the tribe of Torah scholars. The descendants of Issachar were leaders. They knew how to interpret signs of the times, the Pasuk says. All their kinsmen followed them. Issachar was Talmud Torah. But the Gemara actually questions what Leah did. Because the Pasuk says that a woman propositions in her heart, but a man propositions verbally. A man has no problem to say what he feels. But a woman, it's to see the bracha has to be done through her heart. So how could she be rewarded with wise descendants if that's what she said? That's what the Gemara asks. And the Gemara says, when it says that a woman shouldn't be verbal, it's verbally expressing, let's go have sexual relations. That is wrong. But non-verbal cues, such as, come, let's go to the bedroom, or come to me now, okay? Non-verbal cues, or I've traded these flowers for you because I want to be with you. That is very much exceptionary, and that is something that women should do. The reason why it's improper to verbalize, why shouldn't a woman verbalize that she wants to perform the mitzvah and be sexually intimate with her husband? It's because, like we said, man's stamina is limited, and he's not always capable of fulfilling the mitzvah, which requires him to stimulate and give hana'ah to his wife. So the mitzvah of onah is really dependent a lot upon the man and his physical stamina. A woman, on the other hand, lefech, a woman can achieve climax and orgasm every night, even multiple times in one night. And even when she's tense, even when it's difficult for her to achieve orgasm, she can still be responsive to the advances of her husband and take pleasure in his joy. So if she were to proposition verbally and explicitly, when he's in a state that he can't do it, or he doesn't have the stamina, or for whatever reason he's too tired, she's humiliating him, or he will be humiliated from that. Instead of eagerly anticipating the relations, he's going to start dreading the relations, and because he's going to fear, I can't do what I'm supposed to do, and therefore that anxiety that comes as a result could even lead to impotence. It could lead to other things, problems. So therefore, non-verbal cues, and then hopefully the husband will respond. Also, when a husband is so depressed or powerless that he actually feels impotent or devoid of his vitality and the ability to perform the mitzvah, and he doesn't possess the strength to stimulate, let's say, an erection strong enough for sexual relations with his wife, and this happens. There's a sickness called, it's not sickness, ED, erectile dysfunction. So if a person suffers from that, then if he's fortunate enough and his wife is expressing a lot of nonverbal cues, like even a warm embrace or a kiss on the neck, whatever it is, it can revive him. It really can revive this person. It can awaken him that desire to fulfill the mitzvah properly. The last thing we'll talk about today, because we're already at 45 minutes, is time flies when you're having fun. Is the times of Ona. How often should a person perform the mitzvah? Again, it depends on a man's stamina and profession. The Mishnah tells us in Masechet Ketubot, we learned this Mishnah in part 1, that the time of Ona is daily for Tayalim. We'll talk about who Tayalim are. Twice a week for laborers. Once a week for donkey drivers. Once in 30 days for camel drivers. Once every 6 months for sailors. Those are the 5 categories of people in the Mishnah. There was no stock traders in the Mishnah. They only spoke about these 5. So now, who were the Tayalim that performed this daily? So, some say the Tayalim were healthy people with jobs that were easy, stress-free jobs, maybe CEO of companies that already made it big and didn't have much to worry about. And therefore the mitzvah was each night. Others say that Tayalim were, again, very secure financially. They didn't need to work at all. They had inheritance, and therefore for them, any economic disturbance didn't really affect them. They had peace of mind. Laborers, the second category, they worked locally, and they had to do the mitzvah twice a week. Laborers who did not work locally, even if they returned home every night, they had the mitzvah once a week because traveling is very tiresome. And therefore the rule is, the more you traveled, or the longer you traveled, the further you were away, the less frequent you would have the mitzvah. So donkey drivers who would transport produce from villages to markets were usually away most of the week, and they would their mitzvah was once a week. Camel drivers, camels go long distances. They would take merchandise across cities or across countries even sometimes. It would be once a month. And lastly, sailors who would travel the oceans. They could be at sea for up to half a year. The mitzvah was once every 6 months. What about Talmidei Chachamim, Torah scholars? Shulchan Aruch tells us that the mitzvah, for being that the Torah exhausts a person, Torah is very draining, and therefore the mitzvah for a Torah scholar is at least once per week on Erev Shabbat, on Friday night. That is the time that is given. Some of the great rabbis talk about that, if possible, that they should do twice a week. Torah scholars if they can get it done twice a week, even better. Now, here's a very important halakha. If you were a tayal, remember, was a guy that performed on every night, or at least very often. A married tayal could not become a laborer, which is the once a week guy, without his wife's permission. Even if the new job would improve financial situation. So, you know what I'm saying? Here you have, I'm in category 1, which means I should be having sexual relations with my wife every night. And now I have a new job that's going to make me a laborer or a camel driver, whatever it is. But that's going to mean that I'm not going to have relations with my wife as often. If my wife doesn't give me permission, asur, I'm not allowed to take that job. Because she got married to you because you were a tayal. And this was she was expecting. Now you're reducing her onam, that she's entitled to without her consent. And therefore a laborer cannot become a donkey driver, and a donkey driver cannot become a camel driver, and a camel driver cannot become a sailor. But if a tayal wants to become a Torah scholar, meaning if a daily performer of the mitzvah wants to become a Torah scholar once or twice a week, that is allowed, because his wife is not allowed to protest that, even though he would be reducing the onam.
What about a laborer to a tayal? Like this?
That's fine, certainly. You're performing the mitzvah even more. With all that said, it's important to know that these rules were made in a time that is very different from the one that we live in today. On one hand, most men work fewer hours than in the past, doing jobs that are less physically demanding in general. I know some people here work very, very hard with their physical attributes. And in that sense, they are more similar to tayalim, and especially in the business world. A lot of things is done, right? They just a startup business. I just sit back and relax, and I got everybody taking care of what it needs to do. And in many respects, we are a lot like tayalim. And even those who commute to work by car, bus, train, were local laborers, even like tayalim, as long as the commute is not terribly exhausting. But at the other hand, life has become way more stressful today. We have a competitive labor market. There's increased interest in news reports, and we have social media, and you're hearing things, and there's wars. And I always tell people, when war was happening on the other side of the country, you didn't know about it. in the olden days. Just didn't know about it. Right? And now we're all caught up in the news of the day, sources of information. So therefore people sleep less. They're more anxious. And it reduces their natural desire to fulfill the mitzvah. So that's why this is not a set-in-stone halacha, but it seems that for most people the obligation to perform the mitzvah of sexual relations is twice a week, and maybe a little bit more frequent for younger people and newlyweds. And but those who have work that is particularly taxing, whether physically or emotionally, should do it once a week. And if men are living the life and they don't have exhausting work and they have easy professions, and then they're obligated even more than twice a week, and they can even do daily if they have the stamina and their professional duties allow them to. And that's what it is. In addition to setting the obligation to ona, in addition to what we just said here about the times, which we said it's about most men for twice a week, depending on the person. It's also a mitzvah for every husband to have relations with his wife when she desires him, as long as he has the strength for it, as long as he's able to consummate the union. So that means if I did my twice a week on Monday and Wednesday, but my wife really wants to be with me on Friday night, all right? It's not no, we already checked off twice a week. I'm sorry, you got to wait till. No, it doesn't work. You'll also have a mitzvah to fulfill the desire of your wife. There's two parts. There's the set times based on the husband's health and the workload, and also there's the other part of the mitzvah, which is when the wife's desire is aroused, and the husband has to be responsive to that. In light of the second component, when the wife wants it, there's a question that arises, and we'll conclude with this. Why does the Torah have to set times to begin with? Why not just, okay, whenever we're in the mood, that's when we perform it. And sometimes I'll go 2 weeks with nothing, sometimes I'll go a week with 5 times, 10, I don't know. Why does the Torah have to give us set times? For ona, kesuta, onata, lo tigra. So, Rabbi Melamed brings 3 answers to the question. He said, number 1, as years go by and people get older, life's demands grow. And therefore, since sexual relations aren't as new and special as they were at first when a person got married, the couple is liable to push it off. One time it's because he's too tired, one time it's because she has a headache, one time it's because they had a bad day at work, or my stomach's not hurting, and therefore they forego the mitzvah. And deep in their hearts, they're hurt that they're not fulfilling this mitzvah, and they're not yearning for their spouse. And when you're not yearning for more intimacy, there begins to lose interest, and that's not good. And therefore, we have set times, twice a week, once a week, whatever it is, who you are, set times to make sure it happens. And only on rare occasions, when things are especially very tense, a person can forego the mitzvah. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2 why we have set times is because if we only waited for our spouse to express a desire for the mitzvah, then what would happen is you're always going to have one spouse who's going to be more in the mood more often than the other spouse. And that spouse will be ashamed. Oh, I'm the one that's always giving. I'm the one, maybe I should hold back a bit. I'm always the one to initiate. And in contrast, when both the husband and wife know that they have a mitzvah to fulfill, they're going to fulfill it on a regular basis, regardless of the mood. And then you can save the additional times for when the other spouse is showing that extra love and desire. And lastly, the mitzvah has to be done with full attentiveness, as we spoke about earlier. The mitzvah has to be done with paying attention to tiny details, like the banquet, like the nice napkins, preparation, the physical connection, the caressing, to getting them in the mood, and how frequently should the mitzvah be done. The rabbis assess this so that it could be done in a wholesome manner, and that's a consequence. If a man goes too far beyond the frequency, then there's concern that it's going to become superficial for him. Be concerned that it's going to be something he just does to satisfy his urges, his yetzer, and we don't want that. So, and therefore, because the unique joy would go away. So to avoid that, to ensure that mitzvah is fulfilled properly, The Chachamim set a frequency, a set frequency. And that is, again, just a general guideline of what needs to be done. But the idea here is, what we spoke about tonight, is that although it's a man's mitzvah to perform it, really it's a partnership. Really each side needs to kind of feel what the other one is feeling and make it the most important and holy mitzvah that we have. Derech Eretz kadma la Torah. Without this union, then you can't show love for one another. You certainly can't show love for Hashem. If you can't show love for Hashem, then you can't show love for His Torah and for His mitzvot. B'ezrat Hashem, we will continue after the new year, and we'll look at other aspects, continuing on a few more laws. So a few more laws that we need to touch upon. So again, we spoke about the mikveh night and other things that are important, and then maybe we'll expand to some other subjects. Wishing everyone a great night.
Thank you, Rabbi.